Hello and welcome to the One Color, One Emotion collage warm-up. You'll find all the materials you need listed in the classroom. So the idea for this collage comes from choosing one emotion and one color. For the collage I'm demonstrating, I chose the color red and the emotion calm. And it's totally okay for you to just pick a color that you like and then choose an emotion as you create your collage. And so what you want to do is go ahead and grab your colors, grab your materials, and then if you don't already have a emotion, you could think about a experience that you had. As I start this collage, I thought about how I drove and saw the sunrise one morning as I went to an event for Rotary. And so I just started sketching out a rule of thirds grid so that I could figure out exactly where that sunrise would go, where the other element of the collage would go. And if you're not familiar with rule of thirds, it's basically creating this 9-quadrant grid, and it's what photographers use and what we see as humans in nature when we go out. And it is just a way of framing things so that things feel balanced, or they feel stable, or even chaotic, depending on where you want to place things. And so you could place anything that you would like to have more focus in one of the 9 quadrants, or even in the center quadrants of your canvas panel. It's really up to you. It doesn't really matter, but you don't have to decide super early. You can just start cutting out shapes, playing around with your materials, and then as you decide what kind of memory or what kind of the emotion that you want to use, then you can start to think about placing your items. You don't have to glue anything down just yet. By this point, I have a good idea of where I would like my sunrise to go. So I take my red acrylic marker or red acrylic paint stick, and then I start to add my sunrise in the center because that's where I want the viewer's eyes to go. Your collage may have a different composition, and you can find more about that in the 5-day collage challenge. But again, all you need to know is where exactly on the canvas do you want your viewer's eye to go, and then put as much of the collage and all the emphasis with how you are putting your colors together and your paper in that one spot. Now I've gathered my magazine clippings, and this actually is a calendar, and so I really enjoyed the colors on this one because it definitely reminded me of that sunrise that I saw on that morning. So I know that there's aspects of this that I like the sky, and some of like the building parts of it seem a little interesting to me. So I'm just going to cut those out. If you have materials like that where you just want to cut out certain elements like a sunrise or sky or a building, totally do that. These are actually calendars, like the top part of the calendar. So I used whatever I had on hand, and it seemed to work out pretty great. Again, I'm not gluing anything down just yet, and you'll see as I go through this how I move a lot of the pieces around. I cut things down. Just because you're cutting doesn't mean you have to glue anything down. You're free to just start creating the pieces for your collage. And when you start your mark making, which is when you do your doodles or you're writing your words or you're making your stencils, your stamps, that this is that time to do that once all your pieces are cut. But you're also welcome to do that on the canvas itself as well. Now I will begin to glue on the calendar clippings because I know exactly where I would like them to go. I'm just using a normal Elmer's glue. There are a list of glues that you can find in the 5-day collage challenge under the supplies list, and there's a video in there that explains all the types of glues that you could use for collage. But I'm just using some regular Elmer's glue to paste things down. Another thing that I'm doing is placing the pieces of the calendar and just see if they fit before I glue anything down. That's a great way to kind of check to see if it's the right size, if there's a little bit of overlap, and you don't have to get too caught up in making it a perfect circle or a perfect line because you're just gonna see if it fits anyway. And now I'm just gluing things down with some simple Elmer's glue. I'm just laying it down with my hands, but if you had something called a brayer tool, you could use that. But you could also use like a book or a underside of a cup or anything that can smooth out the paper so that it dries flat and adheres to the canvas panel. And you'll see that I'll also start cutting paper pieces again because I want a kind of interesting sunrise look. I don't want it to all look the same. But you're welcome to start gluing your pieces down at this point, and if you're not ready, that's totally fine. You can just keep cutting, keep mark making, and continue to find the pieces that will work for your collage. Now I introduce paper tearing, which is one of my favorite techniques because it's literally exactly what it sounds like. I'm just going to tear the paper, and it has this really nice edge that you can either color with a marker or with the temper paint stick. You could cover it up with washi tape. You could cut it off completely. That little edge there really adds a lot of texture to, in my opinion, my collage is very flat. So adding that ripped up texture looks pretty nice to me. I encourage students to not be afraid of adding color to the torn edge of paper, and even using it without adding any color at all would look really nice for like clouds or smoke or foam. I've seen students create collages with just the torn paper, and it's a really nice effect. If you haven't tried it before, I highly recommend it. But I'll continue to do this for the lower half of the collage. It adds some much needed texture and really makes it look like the sun is rising from the clouds. Now that I finished paper tearing, I'm going to go back to adding some paper cutting. I felt like my sky was looking a little bit too bland, so I wanted to add some like fractured parts of the skylight, like kind of when you look out your window when you're driving and the sun just kind of bounces off the dashboard or in the rear view mirror or in the visor. Like I wanted something like that, that kind of feeling and that visual look. So I'm actually just cutting out pieces of my calendar and pasting them on. Like I said, when the way I teach collage, it's very much like a layered process. So things have already been pasted, but I just keep adding on and adding on. It's like layers of adding things on. And a lot of students find that to be really relaxing because it's like you get to discover your collage as you work on it, and you're not stuck doing one thing. It just unfolds the more that you work on it. As you can see, I started having a lot of fun adding the paper on top of each other and adding more like depth to the collage. The paper cutting on top of the torn paper looked really cool to me, and I started to think about how like the sky had the clouds and it had the actual sky and the light. So that was a lot of fun to glue more of these strips of paper down and have a really interesting effect. By this point, I had picked up some felt squares, and so I really wanted to add another layer of texture to this collage, so I cut out the felt and started to layer it in the areas that I thought were more bland and needed a little bit more color and a bit more texture. I still use Elmer's glue. You could use another type of glue. Again, you can check the classroom to see what types of glues work best for your collage, but I had the Elmer's glue and it worked just fine. By this point, I just continue adding on the felt and cutting up some more of the felt squares and even adding some more paper. You can use whatever it is that you have on hand, and in the 5-day paper collage challenge section, I mentioned like supplies that you might already have at home when you're making your collage, but keep it simple. You don't need all these materials. This is just what I had on hand and what I was able to use. I do like to cut the ends of the paper off instead of folding them over. I think it makes the collage look neater, and it's just like I could use the little strips of paper for another collage, or I can just recycle them. I like to say that the paper had its purpose and now it can go get recycled. And so the way I was encouraging my students as I made this collage was to just feel, you know, how you want to use different textures. I'm using some felting like wool. This is the kind of wool that you could use for other types of crafts, and it is like perfect for clouds, for the ocean, for smoke, for fur, for like bushes, trees. It's great for all types of things. So the way I was using it is separating the fibers out so they're a little translucent, and then just using my glue to glue it down so that it would adhere. I really like using different textures in my collage. It adds this sensory element that I really enjoy, and why I make collage the way that I do is because it's such a sensory kind of way. So I really encourage you all to use different materials when you're making your collage, so it's that mixed media feel to it. I remembered that I had some red yarn, so I started to glue it on here. When I think about the story of this collage, I just remembered seeing all this beautiful pinks and reds and oranges in the sky, and I just felt that adding that little bit of red would not only break up the oranges and the other types of red in the collage, but it would add something to the sky, like that hazy kind of effect. The yarn was a little tricky for me to put on here. If you have another method for how to adhere yarn to your collage, use that. I didn't really know any other way to put it on there, and honestly, yarn can be a little tricky. I have had some success with like saturating the yarn with glue and letting it dry, but you can do whichever method that you feel works the best. And by this point, my collage looks pretty done, but I remembered seeing a lot of crows and other types of morning birds in the sky that day. So I took elements of that collage or the magazine cutout that I had and started cutting out little birds. You could definitely just do some mark making here and just draw some birds with some markers or some acrylic or something. But I just cut them out. I thought the texture was ideal and the shape and size of the building parts. Well, I'm just finishing up the rest of this collage by adding more cut paper pieces. I also add washi tape to kind of frame the top part because I felt like it was a little bare. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this. I know like it's not super like exciting and there's not a lot of quick cuts. I wanted to try to keep this as real to the class experience as possible because I do think some people do enjoy having a video like this where you can just watch and collage along without feeling rushed. So I hope that this video provides that for you and also is something relaxing for you to enjoy. This completes this collage. It's one emotion, one color collage. Let me know what you think, and do share your one color, one emotion collage in the classroom. I'd love to see it. I will comment and just be very supportive of what your collage looks like at the end. And if you have not already, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you can be up to date when I post other lessons. And thank you so much for joining me on this one emotion and one color challenge.